Okay, so I'm going to go out into the garage today and we're going to do some Dremel work. I'm going to take out the magnet at the bottom of the head. I'm going to take out the magnet in here. I'm going to Dremel around the neck because I want to rebuild the neck and attach the head. I'm not going to make it removable because it's a one-of-a-kind custom. We're not mass producing it because the idea would be to have this head removable where you could put the cape underneath and put the head in, but you know, this is a one-of-a-kind. So what I'm going to do is, once I sculpt out the shirt, you can kind of see what I'm doing with the lines where the capes would go. I want to have a hole here and a hole here where we can, you know, tuck the metal wire cape into the hole area with a couple drops of glue and then let it sit, and it'll work out pretty good because I want it to kind of like it's kind of bushing out of the shirt a little bit more. I had the idea. I'm going to talk to a tailor because I got a friend that has a tailor he's used for some work. He's guy's phenomenal. So I want to try this guy on that project just to see how he works out. And then what I'm doing is I'm just kind of sketching out the symbol, where it's going to go. It's just an idea real quick. It's not actually positioned perfectly. And then I want to attach the arms because I like to build out the arms with the muscle structure and get it to where I need it to go. And then what I might do is I might saw it off and then make magnets and removable, or I might just attach them and I might say, you know what, they look good the way they are at, I'm not going to mess with them, and then I might just leave them. So it's kind of up in the air yet. I don't know if I want to go too crazy with everything removable on her, but we'll see. But that's where I'm at. I'm going to go into the garage, we'll get this chopped out, we'll come back and we'll start sculpting out the neck and see what I decided on the arms. Alright, so I'm going to attach the head now and I'm going to work out the neck. So what I like to do is in this position is the core of the attaching it's going to be Magic Sculpt. So when this goes to here, like there, we got about that much, so we're going to cut it right about here. So this way, when that goes like that. So you can see how I dremeled out the neck area and I dremeled out in a hole in there. So the next step is just take some of this Magic Sculpt. I like to use Aves to do the sculpt work, the detailing, the neck muscles and everything. The Magic Sculpt is always for the core stuff like this because once it starts to harden, seems like it hardens a little bit faster than Aves does, and it's also way stronger, at least for like bone structure or attaching pieces, stuff like that. That's why I like Magic Sculpt a lot more. For that stuff, you can use Aves. It doesn't really matter. Aves is still fine, but since I got you have options. So if you want to take the extra route, you can do it. If not, that's fine too. I mean, they all bond and they're all strong. It's just that I like the way Magic Sculpt kind of cures in a way. Because Magic Sculpt, once it cures, it's really kind of hard to kind of sand. I'm not really a fan of it that way too much, but alright, so the back of this neck and the back there is kind of where I want to glue now. So I always like to use gel. Get the Insta set. Not really worried about too much of the back getting messy though, because it'll probably get covered with some hair anyway. But I could always just fix it and sand it tomorrow. Head. Now I knew it was going to push like that. That's fine. You kind of push it back and you can kind of see how the glue kind of went back. So you can just take a piece of paper and I just want to make sure everything's straight, looking good. Let me take this. Cures pretty fast. So now with the extra Magic Sculpt, just get a tool. Always be careful what you're doing too, because even though you think you kind of glued the area, you might it might still be kind of, because like say I wasn't paying attention and I put this down on there and I pushed the head up and I wasn't looking, and when I go back, it's all messed up. So just take a little bit more Magic Sculpt, not much more. And we'll just push just to make sure. See, I pushed in too hard and it kind of pushed the head. So what I'm going to do It's just for my own sake. Yeah, see, I knew that was gonna happen. Sometimes this happens. So we're gonna throw some more glue back here. And we're gonna push this head all the way. And what I'm going to do is going to hit a little bit of glue right in this little crevice here. Alright, so I'm just going to let this sit for like 10 minutes or so, get organized, start planning out the Ave sculpt. I got to get some pictures on the computer for next, just so I could kind of match up what I'm going for. But we're looking pretty good lined up. Yeah, okay. So we'll be right back starting that. Alright, so I got the neck pretty much where I wanted it to be. Looking at female necks, they don't have Adam's apples, but they have those, you know, really strong lines with the little dimple right in there. So I was just looking online, following some stuff. I sort of built out the back of head just a little bit, just to give me some proportions. I mean, it's all going to get covered anyway with the hair, but I just kind of wanted to see where I'm at. You know, sometimes I would turn it upside down too, just to kind of look to see where things are going. Now, it may look pretty strong right now, but once it's cured, I'm going to do some sanding and I'll kind of clean it up a little bit. I don't want it to be too, like, thin like neck, but I wanted to get the basic shapes going. I mean, over here, the cape's going to really cover around there, it's going to cover around there, and then you're going to have the hair back here. So it's more or less around where the Adam's apple would be, you know, because men have an Adam's apple, women really don't have Adam's apples, you know, really prominent, so you got to kind of follow that look. Now, at one point during the sculpt, you might have saw that I kind of stopped the camera and then I dremelled out because a little bit of the square from the original neck was sticking out and it was really messing with me. So I just go into the garage and I dremelled out and I scraped it out and added more to it. But we're looking pretty good. I think once I sand it down, I'll probably have to use some of my Tamiya gray putty and fill out some underneath the neck area. And maybe some other areas, but you know, overall I like it's pretty good. What I'm trying to do is, because of the way it is like you can see the way the torso is kind of bent this way and the neck comes forward. So I found some pictures online where, you know, it almost seems like the women are kind of throwing their back forward and neck, you know, so I'm just trying to capture a little bit of that. So that's where we're at. I'm pretty much happy with it right now. We'll let it cure and then we'll just keep plugging away. Alright, so we're getting pretty close. I'm really liking what's going on so far with her. So at this point, what I did is I went in the garage today and I did some priming on it. I sanded it down and made sure the neck was looking pretty good. You could see how everything's going. And so what I did is some blue pencil marks. I'm trying to figure out how everything's going to be placed on her. So the symbol on her chest is fairly big on all the drawings, so we got to have a nice big symbol there. And as you can see with these marks over here, that's where I'm going to kind of create the chiseling out basically chiseling out these areas and make a big hole so we could tuck the cape in. But what I need to do is I need to build up the shirt a little bit higher, so like at least when the shirt is covering over this part of the neck, it looks like a shirt and it's tucked in. But I also have to make sure that the way we put in the cape too doesn't break any of this as well. So I got to kind of fiddle with that and design it a little bit more. So I think the next steps are I'll probably do some sculpting up around here, and maybe I'll start chiseling out these areas a little bit. I might not go as far out, you know, here. We might have to bring it in a little bit. I got to kind of toy with it. But I'm just looking at a lot of the drawings and how everything is working with her. And it's just going to be a little tricky. And the other thing, too, is I'm thinking about the arms. I think I'm going to do the cape. I'm going to get everything situated, probably do the symbol, pass it off to the tailor. And then I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to attach the arms. I think it'll be easier to have all the arms attached because there's no fingers that are going to be sticking out where I'm worried about breaking them. So I think that'll be fine. But before we do all of that, before it goes to the tailor too, I'm going to want to set this into the base to this area here. So this is probably what we're going to come up with pretty soon. But you can see I've been using a lot of A's and Sculpt and whatever I got extra, just kind of building out the cloud areas at the bottom. I figure I'll keep, you know, using up all this stuff for the clouds, and then when I start getting up here, I can use fresh and kind of detailing it. But that's where we're at. So let's see how things progress before we pass this off. Alright, so at this point, I want to get her into the base. I wanted to make sure that when I'm working on her, things are lined up. Because when I have her on the piece of wood, she's always kind of spinning. And she's always going in different directions like this. And the same thing if I put her in her base. So what I did is I got my Sculpt mixed up, because I like to use Sculpt at this point. Going to go into the garage, we're going to get set up. I'll be using some baby powder, and we're going to get her set up on the base. Now the reason why I'm doing this early in the morning is because throughout the morning to lunchtime and after, I want to keep checking on it to make sure when it hardens, everything is working okay. Because I don't want to just, you know, take the Sculpt, put her in there, push it in, and then pull it out and then walk away 3 hours, and all of a sudden maybe the Sculpt shrinked a little bit. Maybe when I pulled it out, I messed something up. So you got to kind of keep playing with it. So I'll try to do the whole video, like, you know, how I go about it within the next few hours. We'll try to set up in the garage and keep it going, but it's going to be a little tricky. But if you got the time and you got the patience, you can get it worked out where she goes in and out of the base and everything's lined up correctly. So we'll go get that set up and we'll get this done today. Alright, so we're all set up, we got everything, so let's do this as best as I can. So when I'm putting this stuff in here, the Magic Sculpt, I'm trying not to cover up the little peg hole in there. We want to make sure that everything that goes around here is not filling that in. Now, the peg hole goes very deep, so that's a good thing in case anything falls in there, like the baby powder I'm going to use or anything else. Now that I'm putting this stuff in here, I might have to mix up some more Magic Sculpt. We'll see. But I didn't want to mix up too much because I didn't need to overdo it. But no, I think maybe we'll be okay. We'll see. So I have a paintbrush and I have my tools, so I'm just making sure everything's looking good. Oops, that's what we didn't want to do. That's okay. Alright, so looking pretty good. I think maybe we're good enough with Magic Sculpt. Okay, so at this point we're looking like that. So we got the hole in there. We got everything in. Hold on, let's see. Make sure. Alright, so you can see how it's looking. So we could do a couple things at this point. What I like to do is maybe just kind of smooth it out a little bit, making sure there's no like crevices, because when you put the baby powder in there and if it gets underneath something and then it doesn't bond to the other Magic Sculpt, then you might have some problems. What we're going to do is we're going to take the baby powder and we're going to throw it just like that. That's going to help it from not sticking. Now, there is baby powder down in there, and then if you go to paint, you turn the stuff upside down, the baby powder might come out, but you got to kind of try to get that out as well. So then we're going to throw some baby powder on the leg as well. So I'm throwing this like just over here like this, over the garbage can, so all the baby powder in there. And it's just baby powder. Nothing's wrong with it. So then what we do is we push her in this way, just to make sure everything's going where we want it, making sure she's lined up. And then what we could do is we can start pushing this down if we have to. Like I said, I might have to make a little bit more, but maybe we could get away with it. I mean, I'm going to be building up a little bit more here and there. We don't need to fill up the whole entire thing in the leg right away. You know, because I'm going to go above the leg area, so we want to make sure we're lining up with this piece down here. I'm looking at it, and we're looking good now. We might have to lean, let's see. I'm looking at her on the sides, seeing if she's kind of wobbling anywhere. So we got to kind of go that direction. So I got to kind of push it. Okay, so I see what I got to do. And if at any point you're getting a little bit concerned, throw some more baby powder in there. So now I know that it's got to go at a certain angle. Okay, so looking good on this side. And looking good on this side. Okay, so we don't want to wobble her too much. We want to pop her out. Alright, so this is kind of what we're looking at now. We got a little bit more of the key. So it's not perfect at the moment. And like I said, we don't want to... we're gonna come up around the back of the leg a little bit too. You know, we'll come up a little bit here with more A's and Magic Sculpt down the line. But right now we want to just make sure we're getting this bottom of this key where we want it. Now you also got to be careful too. Sometimes, you know, putting it in there, you get some Magic Sculpt that gets stuck on here, and that's why we're using all the A's. So at this point right now, what I like to do is just stop. The A's are still super soft. You know, you can keep putting it in and pulling it out, and it's just gonna get all messy, and it's gonna make it's not gonna work. So we're going to let this stiffen up, I would say maybe about I'd say a half hour to an hour. I'll come back. What we'll do is we'll put up the camera again, and I'll put it in there, and it might be a little bit stiffer, so this way I can actually really push the A's down a little bit and really kind of get it in there a little bit more. And then after that, we kind of come back maybe about 20 minutes, half hour later, try it again, and hopefully within this 3-hour period, we'll be able to put her in, and she's kind of just stiff and staying there, and I can pop her out. But if any time you mess up, it's not the end of the world. We still have the little keyhole down there, and you can always Dremel out the A's, and you can do it again. You don't want to do that because you're wasting material, but at this point, it's okay. It's not the end of the world. So we're looking good. So we'll give it about 20 minutes, half hour. I would say it's a little bit after 11 o'clock in the morning right now. Maybe before I go to eat lunch, we'll come back, we'll check it out, we'll see how things are looking. Then maybe after I eat lunch, we come back and maybe things are just exactly where we want it. So we'll see how things work out pretty good. Alright, so it's almost like 12:30 actually. Well, actually no, it's a little bit after 11. So I was going to see if how this is working, but when you can see it's still pretty soft. You can see how like I'm putting in those little bit lines there. Let's see, we'll go a little close. So it's still fairly soft, so it's really not going to do much if I put it in there and then try to go. Alright, so it's after lunch, so we're probably like 2 hours from when I actually mix this stuff, so it's really starting to get hard, so it may be hard to see in the camera. Like, you almost have to do like some pressure to kind of do some marks in there now. So we're looking good. I always still like to use baby powder on every time I put it in, just in case. You never know. So make sure you're lining up correctly, because it still could be soft, and if you're not putting it in correctly, you can screw everything up. See, it's kind of going in just a little bit too hard. So that means that if I didn't do this now, if I tried to do this when it cured, it wouldn't have gone in. You like to make sure everything's going where we need it. See, like I'm like starting to press it on now, and I'm getting some pushback. So it's definitely getting tougher. But it's still not at the point where I can leave this in, because it will still push it if it's not lined up. Like, you can actually screw up the key. So what I like to do is pop it out, looking good. Really starting to get the whole key shape going there, even though the keys are like not perfectly square. It's all really weird. Throw in a little bit more baby powder. And do it one more time. Going in really good. Okay, so we're looking good. So now at this point, I think in another half hour or 20 minutes, I'll come back and try again just to make sure. I want to make sure this is all lining up correctly. Better safe than sorry. So anytime, like I said, you do this, you got to have some couple hours to mess around with it, you know, because if you put this in, you walked away, you came back the next day, this might bond to the key and you never get the item out. But just by doing it this way, we're getting our basic key and we're looking pretty good. Alright, so we'll be back in like another 20 minutes or so. Alright, so we're probably on the 3-hour mark now, a little bit more. It's almost as hard as a rock. It's really hard to even put an indent with my nail. I kind of lost track of time working on another item, but I think we should be pretty good, and we are. Okay, so you can see she goes in there perfectly fine now. She's pretty much up there with no issues. As you can see, we're lined up really good. I like the way the position's at, so you can pretty much see. Position's looking pretty good. And I think that's it for now. So what we'll do is I'm going to put a little bit more baby powder in here, and I'm actually going to let it sit like this now for the rest of the day and night, just to make sure. But what I might do too is probably to be on the safe side is just do a little bit of fine sanding right here, just in case there's any kind of residue from the Magic Sculpt on it, just to have a little bit smooth going in to the base. Let's see how that works, just a little bit right there. Yeah, looking pretty good. Okay, so alright, so I'll put a little bit of baby powder in it, and then we're going to just let her sit for another few hours. But I'll probably come back later on. I don't have to show it, just to make sure everything's going pretty well and it's not like sticking, but I think we're good. So it looks like, you know, it's not wobbling really. We're looking good. Alright, so there we go. Probably what I'll do is the next step is we'll probably just kind of build up around a little bit around areas, because we're going to have like the cloud kind of come up around the back leg and go that way type thing. So this way I can at least get this done, and we could start getting up back up to the top of her to get the cape out. Alright, so I got a little bit of extra Aves tonight, and I want to work on the shirt a little bit. So what I did is I went in the garage, and you can see I dremelled out in here, and then I dremelled out there. So that's going to be where the cape is going to go. The whole idea is that the cape is going to be pushed into there, and we are going to get like a bunchiness coming out. Of course I got to design the cape and everything, but I got some extra Aves right now, and I want to kind of work out the top of the shirt. The idea is I'm going to lay some Aves over here, kind of stretch it down a little bit. I'll sand it down, and the Aves might stick over these little cracks, these like little warpness that's over around here. It's kind of like a little warped. It's not like a perfect square. But what I'll do is I'll lay the Aves over there, try to make it as nice as possible, and then what I could do is I could throw some Aves in there and make it like a perfect slant going in. A little hard to explain, but it's going to get there. So let's take this little piece of Aves and see if this works. The idea is we're going to work the top of the shirt like this. Cool. Okay. Gotta sort of work it up a little bit. So you can see that that will create the perfect little line. And then you can kind of see it's a little bit not perfectly hollow. So what I'll do is once this cures, I can throw Aves underneath there and fill that in. But what we want to do right now though is we want to kind of blend this out to the outfit. So we want to take this little piece off here and this off here. Now I can't stretch it, pull it too much, otherwise it's going to mess up the whole line. So we kind of want to just blend this down. And then, of course, we're going to have to rework the symbol, but, you know, at least it gives me an idea where the shirt's going to go. And I had the other brush. Where did I put that one? This one should work. This is going to have to get sanded down a little bit too once it cures. But I just want to get it on there, and this is going to at least line up where this shirt's going. Alright, it's a little bit of a mess up. We can kind of try to clean this up a little here. This is going to... And then when I get a chance, I don't know if I want to risk it now. I think we're looking pretty good. Kind of like that. We have to just bring this a little bit. Okay. And then, alright, so let's see. Kind of trying to look at it the side, making sure it's all nice and even. Trying to make sure it lines up pretty good. Now this piece might be sagging just a little bit, but I could kind of fix that too anyway. Yeah, so if you could kind of see, it kind of is hovering over the opening a little bit, but that's okay. That's going to get filled in. That's where we're at with the shirt, looking at it on the side. Now if you look on the side, let's see, if you kind of, hold on, trying to line it up. So it kind of comes up above the collarbone a little bit, like where a shirt would come above the collarbone a little. So that works out pretty cool. It's going to get, like I said, it gets sanded down a bit if we clean it up. But other than that, I think that's where that's what the whole idea is. So once this sets up, I get this all evened out. Like I said, I might actually have to blend some of this. So I got some Aves here. I got to be a little careful. I don't want to get too excited and mess this up. We can put some Aves here, and we could kind of clean this up, because I had to get that Dremel tool in there really deep to really get it in there. I'm not too worried about this being super messy right here, because the cape's going to cover it anyway. We don't want to make it look too like crap. Like I said, I don't want to get too crazy and get in there. At least we could kind of clean up that a little bit. Alright, so and this side's got a little bit of a mess up too. I think what I'll do is the next day is once this cured, before I sand it, I'll take my gray putty, which is this, you know, and we'll just go a nice line right across there. So this way when I sand it down, it's all easier to sand. I don't have to over sand it too, because trying to take that and even it out, I might sand too much of this piece and I'll screw it up. That's what we don't want to do. Now when I start working on this cloth, because I want to try to get as much of a pattern as possible for the tailor, just to make sure he knows exactly what's going on. I don't want to just give it to him and say make the cape, walk away and come back and it's not where I want. I want to actually make sure that it kind of bunches up, but it does go around there, so I gotta see how I'm gonna come up with that. I just gotta make sure it's all even. But looking on the side though of it, looking pretty good. I like it. I think that's exactly where we want it. Now it would have been better if I let this harden, but I think it's going to be fine. And I mean that harden is like let it sit for like 2 or 3 hours, but running pretty late tonight and I'm getting really tired, so let's see. Just wanted to give it one more look on the side, make sure we're looking pretty good. Yeah, so it definitely comes over those circles a little bit. But when I fill that in, because once it cures, I'm going to take the brush and I'm going to go in here like this and I'm going to fill in eaves this way to make sure that this piece is nice and thick, because if it's out of like a triangle like this and then you put the cape in here, it's not going to break the tip. But if it's hanging over this and then you put the cape in, this little extra piece that's hanging off the side will probably snap off, and that's what we don't want to do. But I might have to come back. This kind of keeps sagging, so I might have to come back and like before I go to bed or something and just kind of check on it. I think we're looking pretty good. Yeah, we got a nice line. I think it's lined up pretty good. Alright, so we'll let that sit and see how things come out tomorrow or the next day when I can start filling it in. Alright, so as you can kind of see, I filled in there and I evened out those areas, so now we got a nice triangle. So it's not just like a little piece of eaves hanging off the thing. Now we're at a good like triangle like this, so this way when I put the cape in here, it's not going to break off anything that's kind of like hanging off the side like that. So we're all pretty good. What I'm going to do is let this cure up. I'm going to probably next day or whenever I get a chance sand this down, and then we can actually start working out the cape, at least a pattern. I want to get it cleaned up as much as possible. I don't want to pass it off to the tailor being any kind of dust, because if there's dust in here and he works on it, he pulls out the stuff, everything gets messy. So I want to make sure everything's nice and clean, so we'll have to probably like do some wet sanding and everything. But I also put the Tamiya putty over here, so this way when I sand this down, at least I'll probably hit a nice smooth thing. So we're in a good position right now, so we'll see what happens once I get all this sanded down, and if I need to do anything else, or if it would be a good time to just pass it off. Alright, so I'm going to start working out the pattern for this cape. The only thing, the way I work on it is I just basically kind of make up my first pattern with a cape. I cut it out, I put it on the statue, see how it works, and then from there I'll get another piece of scrap cloth. I'll draw on that one again, and I just keep going until I get something I think that's going to work. When I get my basic shape done and I get my basic idea, then I can take the statue and the cloth to the tailor and see what he says. and we go from there. But right now what I'm doing is I'm just kind of making up my own little pattern. The idea is I need it to be tight around the neck, because if I make it too loose around the neck, we'll probably see stuff. So what I did is I measured out from here. So we're going to have a nice little loop that's going to be tight on the neck, and then I have the top part going to the shoulder to the shoulder. But when this gets crunched in there, it should kind of bunch up. Now I might have to make this, you know, a little bit, you know, tighter and stuff. Now I went pretty far down with the cape for now, only because what I might have to do is I might have to bring this up. So if I feel that I need more bunchiness, I could bring this up and then I could recut again. So because the cape really doesn't go that far down to her, maybe to like maybe around the almost like bottom of the butt to the thigh area, I think. I don't know, we'll see. But this is what I got now. So let me cut this off and we'll put it on and we'll see how it looks. Alright, so what I did is I cut up the cape a little bit more, and I cut up in the back as well, so it comes to just about, you know, the bottom of her butt to about the thigh. She doesn't have a really long cape, a lot of her drawings. But you can see how the idea is that's going to be kind of crunched up in the shoulder area. I had to cut out a little bit of the back a little bit more too to make it just a little bit longer. It's messy here, of course. It's not going to come to a point. I mean, I'm going to have to talk to the tailor and see if he could kind of round it, but just giving him a basic pattern, as you can see. So once the wires are in there, it'll be way easier to put it into the piece and glue it at the end. So this way, you know, everything will kind of bunch up a little bit more like this, you know, on the shoulder. And then the wires, we can kind of bend it, you know, and then have the flowing or whatever, you know. So I think this is going to work out pretty good. It's not looking perfect up in here, only because the fabric I'll be using is that Yaya Cosplay stuff that I used on my Power Girl stuff. And when you bunch that stuff up, it gets very puffy, and it's going to wind up going around the areas of the, you know, the sculpt and everything. So it should work out pretty good. Right now, this is just super thin cape that's just flopping around, and it's not got a wire, nothing in it. So, but you can see what I did there. You know, first, you know, I started off here, and then I kind of ended up here. Now, I do know when I talk to the tail, we're not going to have a, you know, a really straight point. It's going to have to be curved a little bit, which is fine. You know, and then I think that's going to work out pretty good. So I think this first pattern was perfect. I think it just worked out. So probably what's going to happen now is I'm going to get this all set up. I'll have to plan a day within the next couple weeks to get over to the tailor. Between now and then, if I have a chance to work on her a little bit more, I might. But as of now, we'll stop this part of the video. I'll probably come back maybe, you know, closer to the end of the summer, seeing how things go, how he progresses, and everything. So as long as we get the cape, it goes in exactly how I want it, and everything's looking good, I could go ahead and finish her up, get her sculpted with the hair, the outfit, the skirt, the clouds, attach everything, and then at the end it'll just be a little bit tricky, but it's just a matter of taking, you know, the glue. I use this BSI glue, and it's got a long tip in it, so you can put all the way down in the bottom. You can throw a bunch of glue back in there, and then you hit it with a couple of drops of Insta-Set once you put in the cloth, just so that you don't get any clouding coming up, you know, on the paint or the cloth or anything like that. And it should work out pretty good. So I think that's where we're at, and hopefully maybe by the end of the summer we'll get some nice progress shots of the cape and keep going with it.